welcome to today's edition of Editorials, a broadcast from Canada. My name is Sandra Asante. Today we are drawing consent on two seemingly things. First of all, the war in Tigray continuing as government stays silent, as well as Ethiopian attack in two northern regions intensifies. That's what the Tigrayan forces are saying. So don't go anywhere. I'll be back after the break. You're welcome back from the break. We start off with the continual of the attack, and military attacks are once again punctuating the ongoing crisis in Ethiopia. But government officials have not acknowledged a free offensive, which Tigrayan forces say began last week. An air and ground offensive in Ethiopia's northern Tigray region is intensifying, according to the Tigrayan forces, with the Ethiopian government pressing a fresh attack. The Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF) says the fighting began with airstrikes launched by the federal government last week. However, the office of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has not acknowledged the offensive. The office released a statement stating that the government had a responsibility to protect its citizens in all parts of the country from any act of terrorism. Government officials have not responded to DW's request for further comment. The offensive reportedly began just days after Abiy Ahmed was sworn in for a new 5-year term. He is facing a growing pressure from the international community to swiftly resolve the Tigray crisis, with fighting arising fears that the conflict could further destabilize the Horn of Africa nation and plunge the region into deeper famine-like conditions. Now let's look at the fighting on all fronts, and with the regions close to journalists and most phone connections down, attempts to independently verify the situation and confirm casualty numbers have proved difficult. Haile Mariam Mambeye, the Northern Wall Zone administration head in Amhara province, was reachable on Wednesday. The government forces continue their assault to retake the occupied territories. The government forces continue their assault to retake the occupied territories, he told DW. It has brought a lot of force to the fight. At the moment, the offensive has started on all fronts, and we will give more details soon. According to Reuters, TPLF spokesperson Getachew Reda denies claims that forces had used heavy weapons against civilians, but did not confirm fresh hostilities in the Afar region. Enemy forces are crumbling and in disarray in part of Afar, he said. The TPLF pushed into the neighboring Afar and Amhara region in July to stop government forces from regrouping and break what it called humanitarian siege of Tigray. Last month, the government said it had suffered great losses and was routed from Afar. While the TPLF said it had withdrawn troops from the area, Afar currently hosts the only land routes through which humanitarian aid can enter Tigray. We do not target civilians, and the alleged artillery attack is yet another fictitious accusation to tarnish our forces' reputation, Getachew Reda said. He added that the TPLF's current military objective is to push back the offensive and go as far as it takes to break the siege on the people of Tigray. He said the number of casualties were staggering. Now we will look at the humanitarian crisis as it deepens. Humanitarian sources have also reported signs of a government offensive that could potentially mark a new phase of the almost year-long Tigray war. Gehas Mohammed, the chairperson of the Afar Human Rights Organizations, told DW on how one of the latest attacks unfolded. It happened on two villages. Mohammed said the first one was Lewa. The district is located in the border area between Wodeya and the Amhara region and Hara in Afar. In last 2 days, 6 people were killed and more than 20 injured. We have said that the war is going on in the Afar region, Mohammed said. As per their only rectified constitution, crossing a regional border means violating the constitution, but they are committing the offensive. They do not care about civilians. Observers are closely watching Abiy's new cabinet for signs of a different approach to the conflict. as the government faces growing international condemnation for its handling of the war and the recent expulsion of 7 senior UN officials. Western nations call for ceasefire. Fighting broke out in November 2020 in the Tigray region after Abiy sent troops to topple the TPLF, which dominated national politics before he took office in 2018. Now let's look at the Ethiopian attack in two northern regions intensify. So an air and ground offensive by Ethiopian troops and their allies against forces from the northern Tigray region is intensifying. A spokesperson for the Tigrayan forces said on Wednesday, claiming staggering casualties. Getachew, leader of the Tigray People's Liberation Front (TPLF), told Reuters by phone that Ethiopian militaries and allies from the Amhara region were fighting the Tigrayan forces on several fronts in both the Amhara and Afar regions, which neighbor Tigray. A spokesperson of the Ethiopian military did not immediately respond to a request for comment, but the military and government have not acknowledged a fresh offensive, which the TPLF says began with airstrikes last week. Days after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed was sworn in to a 5-year term, it is an ongoing fight and number of casualties is staggering, Getachew said, adding that he could not give details of the number of dead or wounded. He said there was fighting in the town of Wadiya in Amhara and that fighting had resumed in Afar, in the Haro and Chifra areas near the Amhara border. Reuters was not able to independently verify the situation on the ground or to confirm casualty numbers because the area is close to journalists and many phone connections are down. The fighting has raised fears that it could further destabilize the Horn of Africa nation of 109 million people and plunge Tigray into deeper famine. The conflict has already drawn Ethiopia's neighbor, that is the secretive and repressive nations of Eritrea, which sent troops across the border to support the Ethiopian military when the conflict erupted in November 2020. Aid workers, citing witnesses, told Reuters that Eritrean fighters were still inside Ethiopia and are taking part in the conflict. Eritrean Information Minister Yamani Gabriel did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Another humanitarian worker citing witnesses said Eritrean forces were fighting Tigrayans in Behali, a town in the Afar region. The U.S. State Department said on Tuesday that it was considering the use of economic sanctions to penalize parties responsible for the violence. Thousands of civilians have been killed and millions displaced by fighting since erupted in Tigray. Tigrayan forces were initially beaten back but recaptured most of the region in July and pushed into neighboring Amhara and Afar regions. Amhara claims the western Tigray as worthy of fertile farmland with a strategically important border with Sudan, which has been under Amhara control since the fighting began. Tigray's border are now surrounded by hostile forces and the United Nations says the government is blocking food aid to hundreds of thousands of starving people, a charge it denies. World Health Organization Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said on Wednesday that in Tigray, more than 90% of the population needed food aid and about 400,000 people were living in famine-like condition based on the United Nations' latest analyst. He said, "We are seeing acute malnutrition rates at levels comparable to those we see at the onset of the 2011 Somalia famine." He said, "In that famine in Somalia, 260,000 people died." Tedros said no medical supplies have gone into Tigray since July. Such a fraction of health facilities in Tigray remain operational due to the lack of fuel and supplies. People with chronic illness are dying due to lack of both food and medicine, he told a news conference in Geneva. The Prime Minister's spokesperson, Balinier Soyom and Leah Tedase, the health minister, did not immediately respond to Reuters' message requesting comment on Tedros' statement. This is where I end today's editorials. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Sandra Asante. Enjoy your weekend.